Congress just passed a 130-page housing bill that claims it will increase supply and improve affordability. It passed 390 to 9. Most people will never read it. I did, and today I'm breaking down what's actually inside and whether it could really lower housing costs. What just passed? The bill is officially titled the Housing for the 21st Century Act. Its stated purpose is simple: increase the supply of housing in America. Not rent control, not mortgage rate cuts, not direct price caps. Supply. The House passed it with overwhelming bipartisan support. Now it moves to the Senate, where it will likely be merged with a different housing package. But before that happens, let's look at what's actually in this bill, because some of the most important pieces are buried deep inside. Part 1. Federal zoning guidelines, not a takeover. One of the largest sections directs the Department of Housing and Urban Development, known as HUD, to publish national zoning guidelines. These are recommendations, not mandates. The bill clearly states HUD cannot penalize a state or locality if they choose not to adopt the guidelines. So what's being recommended? The bill outlines best practices like reducing or eliminating parking minimums, allowing duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes by right, increasing building heights, reducing minimum lot sizes, encouraging housing near transit, allowing accessory dwelling units. In simple terms, this section tries to remove local barriers that slow construction. Supporters argue restrictive zoning is one of the biggest drivers of high housing costs. Critics argue zoning decisions should remain entirely local. This bill clearly leans toward one idea: if you make it easier to build, more housing will follow. But here's the question: even if more homes are approved, will they be affordable? We'll get to that. Part 2. PRE-approved housing designs, pattern books. This is one of the most practical sections. The bill creates the Accelerating Home Building Grant Program. Local governments can receive grants to create what are called pattern books. That means pre-approved housing designs. These can include duplexes, triplexes, townhouses, cottage courts, and other small multifamily buildings, up to 25 units. If designs are pre-approved, builders don't have to go through lengthy approval processes every time. That reduces delay, and delay increases costs. The bill even allows HUD to require repayment of grant money if those pattern books aren't actually used within 5 years. So this isn't symbolic, it's meant to produce results. This section focuses on missing middle housing, homes between single-family houses and large apartment towers. That's an area where supply has been particularly limited in many communities. Part 3. Streamlining environmental reviews. Now let's talk about environmental review. The bill reclassifies certain housing activities under lighter review categories. Examples include down payment assistance, tenant-based rental assistance, rehabilitation of small residential buildings, converting office buildings into housing, infill development. Infill is defined as land already served by infrastructure, not undeveloped land and not high-risk flood or wildfire zones. Supporters say environmental reviews can delay housing projects for months or even years. Critics say those reviews protect communities and environmental safety. The bill requires reporting over 5 years to measure whether these changes reduce review times and administrative costs. So lawmakers will eventually see whether this actually speeds up construction. But speeding up approval doesn't automatically mean lower prices. That depends on how the market responds. Part 4. Large increases to multifamily loan limits. Now here's one of the most significant financial changes. The bill increases loan limits under the Federal Housing Administration, or FHA. These limits determine how much can be borrowed per housing unit in federally insured multifamily projects. Some per-unit caps increase dramatically, from around $40,000 to over $160,000 per unit in certain cases. That's a major update. Construction costs have risen substantially in recent years. Old loan limits often didn't match real-world costs. If developers can't borrow enough to cover expenses, projects stall. Supporters argue this change modernizes financing and allows more projects to move forward. Critics may worry about expanding federal risk exposure, but practically speaking, this provision makes it easier to finance multifamily housing. And financing is often the bottleneck in new construction. Part 5. Manufactured and modular housing. The bill also promotes manufactured and modular housing. Factory-built homes can often be constructed faster and at lower cost. It updates definitions and expands financing tools for this type of housing. There's also a study requirement examining workforce housing, defined as households earning roughly 80% to 120% of area median income. These are middle-income households that often earn too much for low-income assistance, but still struggle with market prices. So the bill recognizes that affordability pressure extends beyond the lowest-income households. Part 6. Consumer protections. The bill includes provisions to exclude certain disability benefits from income calculations, improve coordination between HUD, the Department of Agriculture, and the Department of Veterans Affairs, expand family self-sufficiency programs, reform housing counseling, establish an eviction helpline. So it's not only developer-focused. However, several lawmakers have pointed out that regulatory reform alone may not lower costs if housing programs remain underfunded. That debate will likely continue in the Senate. What this bill does not do, it does not lower mortgage rates, cap rent increases, ban large investors from buying homes, guarantee immediate price reductions. This is a long-term structural supply bill. Even if this became law tomorrow, local governments would need to update zoning rules. Developers would need to secure land and financing. Construction itself can take 12 to 24 months, sometimes longer. So this is not a 6-month solution. It's more of a multi-year shift in how housing gets built. And that matters because expectations matter. What happens next? The Senate passed its own housing package previously. The two bills differ in certain areas, especially around grant programs and regulatory changes. Now lawmakers must reconcile the two versions. Given the 390-9 vote, there is momentum, but negotiations could alter major sections before anything becomes law. So now the real question becomes, is making it easier and faster to build the right long-term solution to high housing costs? Or do you think Congress needs to take a different approach entirely? And what would actually make housing more affordable where you live?